Hello everyone, so it's been a while since I've made any updates about this tropical paludarium, and because this setup is fairly old already. I created it back in December, so it's over 6 months for sure. And yeah, it's kind of a matured in a way, so at least it has reached the state in terms of vegetation, in terms of stability that I wanted it to reach. And today I'll make a detailed overview of everything inside of this setup, the plants, the fish, equipment, basically everything. So because it's a sunny day, there's a bit of a reflection, especially in that corner, and there's not much I can do about it, because if I'll try to film this later on in the evening when it's darker, then it will be a bit too dark, and there will still be a reflection, so we'll just have to bear with this. And yes, so as I've said, I'm really happy with the way plants are growing and the fish are doing in this setup. There's a lot happening in terms of immersed vegetation, above the water vegetation. So I'll probably start with that, and then we'll move on towards the underwater part of the setup, and I'll talk about the plants. So there's actually not too many plants that are growing below the water line. So most of the growth is happening above the water line for obvious reasons. There's more light, there's more CO2, and there's more space. So, but nevertheless, I'll talk about the plants and I'll talk about the fish. Starting with this corner. So in here, I have a fern. I don't know the species of this fern because I bought it at a garden center. And initially, well, it's been here for at least like 2 months, and I wasn't sure if it is going to grow because it is actually growing as an epiphyte. Its roots are not in water. It's attached to this piece of driftwood, which you can see underneath, and its roots are in moss, in sphagnum moss. So there is no soil and there's no water in there, but obviously sphagnum moss is a bit moist most of the time, because I spray this whole above the water part of setup occasionally, almost every day, so it does stay moist, and it's actually growing. I wasn't quite sure whether a fern will grow as an epiphyte, but it seems to be the case. So in here I have 4 branches of red mangrove, and red mangroves are really slow growers. It takes them ages to release a new leaf, to sort of get established. Now they are established, but I don't think they get enough light, so this one is growing well. These 3 here are fine. In here I've added a parlor palm or areca palm, just literally a small branch of it a while ago. So the roots are in the water and it is growing. It's probably not prospering because, again, not much light, but it is growing. I have here finally some Echinodorus argentinensis starting to immerse. There's a couple of immersed leaves in here, that's one, and there's another one. Again, the problem is with light, and I'm going to address this problem by replacing these 2 lamps. There's actually 1 lamp here and 1 lamp over there, with one more powerful, larger lamp that will actually be suspended from the ceiling. I have been relatively reluctant to drill holes in the ceiling in order to attach hooks and suspend a lamp, but it just doesn't look very well. Well, these are holders for shelves, just regular shelf holders, and they look a bit ugly, to be honest. There's this styrofoam pieces that keep them in place, and as a temporary solution, this all looks fine and works fine. It's quite functional, but long-term solution doesn't look well, and I will just need to drill holes. I already bought some hooks, and I will suspend the light from the ceiling. So yeah, this will hopefully address the problem of insufficient light for these plants in this corner. But moving on here, there is a lot happening here, and there's basically one single species of plant that has dominated this area, central area in here, and that's Hydrocotyle tripartita Japan. At some point I started trimming it, and you can see that these areas, they all used to be covered by Hydrocotyle tripartita, but now they're free, so I did trim it a bit. I don't have a particular design when it comes to trimming this plant, so I do it quite randomly, and basically I don't know why did I create this hole in here, just for the sake of it, and I can actually see that the moss underneath is doing great actually. It obviously doesn't receive as much light as it should, or probably no light at all, but it's actually growing, and you can see that it's still quite healthy and seems to be doing well. It is getting enough water. So yeah, Hydrocotyle tripartita is just blossoming here. There are tons of it. It's growing all over the place, sort of going up under the light and going to the sides. It's actually sort of trying to colonize the wall and the space behind the wall, and just moving on this side of the fish tank. So it is certainly the dominant plant when it comes to immersed plants. The other plant that is sort of appearing here and there is Bacopa caroliniana, and you can see it has this beautiful little blue flowers that pop up in some places, and I just need to make sure that it doesn't fall back into the water occasionally. So yeah, Bacopa caroliniana is also growing immersed, and it's blossoming. It's actually seems to be doing great. It is, for obvious reasons, actually growing much better immersed than underwater, because it gets more light and CO2, and obviously also more space to spread out. Alright, moving on. So in here I have two more red mangrove trees. Well, they're not really trees, they're kind of pieces of red mangrove branches, and this one here is doing really great. It's sort of branching up. This is what I wanted to do, so it would sort of spread out and become larger. This one also doing very well, because they get a lot of light. There are two lamps in here, and this is what they absolutely enjoy. And this corner here, at some point it was almost completely overgrown by Hydrocotyle tripartita, but I did trim it almost completely. And the moss that was underneath was in a different condition actually. So you can see in some places where the moss does get a lot of water, it's actually very dark green, and it seems to be growing a bit better actually. In other places where it doesn't get enough water, it becomes really bright, and I would say it becomes really light. And I wouldn't say it's growing any better than the other parts of the moss. Well, in here I have something that was called Riparium, Tropical Riparium moss. So it was sold by the Tropical company, and it has actually these small little flowers, or yeah, they look like yellowish flowers. Really beautiful, and quite unusual for a moss, because other species of mosses, they don't necessarily blossom, or at least I've never seen any other moss blossoming. Right, that's pretty much it in terms of the above water part. Well, in here, of course, I have my all-time favorite Hydrocotyle leucocephala, or Brazilian pennywort. Most of it is growing underwater, but in here it has managed to break the water surface and just hanging out of the fish tank, which I really like the way it grows when out of water. Over here on the surface I have Limnophila siamensis. It is obviously not going to grow immersed, it's just growing underwater. Well, doing relatively fine. I wouldn't say it's just going nuts. Some Bomba aquatica in here. There was a lot of it, but I did trim and remove quite a bit of it. This is a pond lily. It's actually growing, it's hard to see, the roots are in here. It was sold as one of those dwarf pond lilies, and it's called SP Indiana. So apparently some cultivar decorative pond lily. When it comes to underwater plants, the elephant in the room is definitely this red lotus lily, Nymphaeus sp. This is certainly an African species, and it's not biotop correct because quite a lot of plants and fish are from South America in here, but nevertheless it's absolutely stunning. It is growing great, and I don't really understand how does it manage to get enough light to grow that well, but it does, and I'm really happy with it because I've added a few of these Nymphaea lilies. You can see the second one here actually, and it's tiny. Third one, hardly even noticeable, that's the one here. But this one here is doing just amazingly. In here I have some bits and pieces of Christmas moss, not getting enough light and not growing well. Underwater, there's obviously also some Hydrocotyle tripartita and some Bacopa caroliniana growing underwater. In here I'll try to zoom in on some Bacopa caroliniana. It is growing well. It's a stem plant, obviously it's a fast growing plant, but still above water it's more colorful, more lush, and sort of faster growing. In terms of other plants that I have underwater, is this rather miserable looking Cryptocarine venti or vendi. Yeah, it's sort of half covered by algae, and it has started sort of shooting new leaves recently, so I'm still hopeful that probably it's going to do a bit better, but for now it's looking sad. Well, talking about the fish, you can see here one of my Brochis multiradiatus. I have several of them in here. They are probably one of the largest Corydoros species. They're not actually Corydoros, they're Brochis. Well, previously they were classified as Corydoros, but after the recent revision of Corydoridae genus, they became Brochis again. So that's another one. Really amazing looking fish, really difficult to source in the UK, and they're only available seasonally. They're wild caught from Peru. Very finicky feeders. These ones would only take live foods such as blackworms, grindleworms, or frozen bloodworms. I have never managed to win them on dry foods of any kind, so that's what we have here. At some, well, I believe that they are still relatively young. I'll try to zoom in. Not sure if I have any males and females in this group. I have 5 of them. You can currently see 4 of them in here. At some point I'm planning to try to breed them, so I'll move this group to a separate tank and I'll try to breed them. In the back you can see one of the wild caught Microgeophagus ramirezi, so basically wild blue ram cichlid. Also extremely difficult to source because most, well, it's gone now. Most of the blue rams that we have on sale are farmed in Asia, and they have very poor genetics, so they don't survive too long. But wild fish, they are incredible. You can see this guy here. They are very shy, so they will hide most of the time. I have 2 of them in here. I believe both are actually males. Yeah, a bit beaten up. They are not as colorful as farmed fish or captive bred fish, but they are very hardy. I actually keep this tank only at 25 degrees Celsius, and both of them have grown a lot. They're actually quite large and chunky fish, although they're still very young. absolutely amazing fish, and I would love to get more, but they are extremely rare and extremely difficult to source. Literally 99% of rams that we have on sale are farmed. In this corner you can see 3 Corydoras duplicarius. These are Corydoras duplicarius that were born in one of my tanks in my fish room. I will have a separate video about breeding fish because I had quite a lot of successful breeding projects recently, and this is one of the successful breeding projects. I actually moved them in this tank because they were the smallest fish among other Corydoras duplicarius that I've had, so they probably didn't get as much food, but in here they would get more food because these big guys generally don't care about the same foods that the others eat. In the back you can see one of the Corydoras pulcher or palcher. In English it's called pretty Corydoras, but now it's actually not a Corydoras, it's called Hoplysoma after the revision of the Corydoras genus. Here you can see Hoplysoma CW28, formerly Corydoras CW28. I have 6 of them, I have 4 pulchers, and I have about 10, I'm always mixing up, Hoplysoma concolor, formerly Corydoras concolor. Very beautiful cories. Actually, well, not cories, Hoplysomas. It's very difficult to get used to these new names. And you have probably noticed tons of, well, quite a few cardinal tetras. I have about maybe 50 cardinal tetras in here. Initially I used to have about 70, but I guess some of them have died of old age, and they are surprisingly breeding in here. I found recently a little tiny cardinal tetra in here, and that's okay, that's an Microgeophagus ramirezi. I have to catch this moment while he's here. Oh yeah, that's most likely he is still out. Yeah, so going back to cardinal tetras, they are actually breeding in here, and I'll try to show you a smaller one, which is surprising because it's very difficult to get cardinal tetras to breed. In terms of Corydoras, I don't think I have any other Corydoras species in here. Do I? Most of my cardinal tetras are actually hanging out in this corner of the tank for whatever reason, I don't really know. There are also a few other fish that I have in here, mostly pencils. This is Nanostomus equus. I have a few of them. That's another one, and that's another one. And I have a lot of Nanostomus beckfordi in here. Most of them were bred by myself in the fish room, but there are some also older ones, sort of the parents of F1 and F2 generations. I believe that's one of the older ones, female. Yeah, that's her. I also have here, well, I bought this fish as red-breasted acara, Heletacara dorsigera, but to be honest, I think these are just regular dwarf flag acaras. They are also very cryptic and shy, so I don't think I can catch one at the moment. They're hiding most of the time. So basically I have 2 species of dwarf cichlids in here, Microgeophagus ramirezi, which I showed you earlier, and these dwarf acaras. This is one of Hoplysoma concolor, I think male. They're beautiful and active catfish. Well, in a moment I'm going to throw some Corydoras pellets in order to entice the entire Corydoras crowd that I have in here. But before I do that, I'll take you briefly through the equipment that I have on this tank. Well, initially the idea was to have this system as relatively low tech. It's not the case in terms of lighting. I have 2 lights here, 2 LED lights. One is a Hygger lamp, the other one I don't know the brand. I think it has no brand. But otherwise I would say it's relatively low tech. I have here a heater. This is a Hygger heater. That's the control panel, and the heater is Behind it's actually quite well hidden. I don't think you can see it. The heater has recently been misbehaving, so I've added this thermometer in here to control the temperature, but normally this thing is not here. And the other piece of equipment I have here is this pump connected to a regular sponge. That's just medium sized sponge that goes all the way to the bottom, and that's all in terms of filtration. I normally do a 50% water change once per week, and during that water change I would clean the sponge, which is normally very dirty at that time. But that's it in terms of filtration, and I don't feel that I need any other filtration in here, to be honest. Yes, there's a lot of fish in here, but most of these fish are small, and sort of there's a lot of plants to deal with nitrates. Well, briefly about the decoration, the background, there will be a link here to how I created the background and the drip wall. By the way, drip wall is still working fine. It's still going strong. Previously there were some comments that drip wall is going to clog, but you can see here it's doing great. In here it is doing great as well. You can see some drops here falling down. Obviously there is no way for me to tell what's happening in here, but actually once I started digging in there and the moss was wet underneath, so apparently still doing great. You can see drops here. That's also drip wall working. So overall, drip wall is functioning pretty much the way it was when I first installed it back in December, and I haven't noticed any issues with it. In terms of clogging, well, obviously, the water comes through this pipe here into the PVC pipe that goes all the way here. And obviously it's water that's sort of filtered through that sponge, so there is nothing that can get through the sponge that's big enough to clog the pipe. I know there can be debris and smaller stuff that can clog individual holes. What I normally do is I would switch off the pump, then I will switch it back, and then I will switch it off a few times, 3 or 4 times. So every time water current sort of pushes everything out, and that's how it cleans itself pretty much. So no complaints about drip wall. Well, I got a bit distracted, so what I wanted to say and to show are those botanicals that I have in here. These are Cariniana pots. They're pretty old, and the reason why I love Cariniana pots is because they last a really long time in a fish tank. So these pots are probably about 2 years old. When I touch them underwater, they're obviously a bit soft, but they're not going to crash or fall into pieces like a lot of other botanicals. This is a savu pot, savu nut pot. Behind I have a coconut pot, which is actually extremely soft. If I'll touch it, it's just kind of really squishy. And the coconut shell behind. I have lots of these pots and shells around the fish tank. This is a piece of Cornish oak wood. It goes all the way here. And quite a collection of Cariniana pots in the back. So I have added some Corridors pellets in here, 1, 2, 3, and the catfish will smell them in a moment and they will all gather around, so just bear with me. As I've said, multiradiatus are not interested in dry foods. They're sort of sensing them and sort of smelling them, but that's not the piece of pie. And now I have more Corridors out here feeding on pellets. You can see here this absolutely stunning Hoplysoma CW28. Formerly Corridors. Very beautiful chunky fish, extremely difficult to source in this country. This is Hoplysoma concolor, a female, also a relatively large cory. Multiradiatus are sort of swimming around hoping that I would show them something, but they won't get any frozen bloodworm today. Quite a lot of the corridors are now out in here, and yeah, basically there is about 20 something corridors in here, maybe more. And, with exception of Duplicareos, they're all adults, fairly large and chunky. Well, that's pretty much it for now, and I'll show you again sort of a overall view of the fish tank of the Paludarium. It is doing great, it's growing great, and I'm really happy with it at the moment. And as you probably know from my channel, I'm quite a supporter of stable and long-term systems, and I don't like breaking down tanks, shutting down tanks unless I really have to. So my preference is to keep the system the way it is for as long as I can, and obviously I will be changing some things, like for example lighting, or I will be adding some plants or removing some plants. I can't really remove any fish from here because it's absolutely impossible to catch them. In order to catch them, I will have to remove the decorations, which is also impossible. So the fish are here for as long as they live. And yes, I don't think I will be adding anything else in here because this fish tank is quite well stocked. And basically I'm planning to keep the system the way it is for as long as I can, and just to see how tall these plants, well, especially the mangroves, will grow, and everything else. So again, apologies for a somewhat longer video. I hope you like it, and don't forget to leave your comments, your opinions about the way this fish tank looks, and whether there's something that I need to change or add or remove. And yes, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe, which helps the channel. And yeah, I'll see you very soon in further videos.